Okay.
Now, are these pointing at the bottom or just?
They'll come to about the size of my little finger, and then they go into the ground.
So
Okay.
they're not like this picture where they're rounding.
That's another type. I didn't have a
All right.
study of the other one, so I had this one. They're left over. I just happened to have enough for this class,
Okay,
and it's the
that's good.
top part that's in front.
Okay.
The rest of this is exactly the same. You just rolled and made a round bottom instead of an ice cream cone at the bottom.
Okay.
Same flower, okay?
All right.
And a lot of times they'll have sort of an hourglass. That bottom section will have a kind of an hourglass shape. And even this one will curve in or be pinched in or cinched in a little bit where it collapses a little bit when it's growing. Different ages, different stages. Okay. Okay. God. Now, some of you have got a skinny little top. Okay? You have. Well, if you've made your little ruffles pretty good, if you'll come down here and just take your brush and just do a little line like that, you'll have a little turn back right there.
Okay.
Okay? You see what I've done? And that's made, giving an illusion. You see that unrolling and flatten out, looks wider. Okay, now, I'm going to hold this up. If you'll follow that little turn back a little bit. Now, I've got little roundy moundy points on that turn back, but my points are pointing. So here's the case. Instead of pushing back around towards the center, I'm going to come back here and wipe down in this turn back and then do a little fine line that rolls back down there. Now look how that rolls that turn back perfectly. Okay? Don't go around the world for that line. Put that line in the closest point to the center, not the furthest way. Now that's the way to get it, and then tomorrow you can shadow that with the curvature of the wipeout. Okay? So if you got one that's too long or too skinny, you just fatten him up a little bit. Put some padding on it. And the eye that'll get that looking wider in there. The same thing when you got a skinny side to the leaf, if you'll make a turn back to that. And you can do that before it's fired or after it's fired. It won't make a bit of difference when you do it. A lot of times you'll get a grape leaf that's just a little too frilly and too small. If you'll put a lot of turn backs on it, you'll see it just crumples up and it's going to open up and look like it's a huge grape leaf. Okay? So really, you paint the grape leaves in proportion to the grapes, but you got to realize the leaves to the grapes are 10 times, 20 times the size of the grapes. So if you do some turn backs, it really looks out of proportion, but keeping it small gives it the look the right size. Okay. Now I'll come around in a few minutes. I want to go over this next one, and this one is the hard one. I'm not going to lie to you, okay? Now, you do not have to do this one. If you don't want to, I want you to understand it, okay? Okay, let's watch this because this is how I'm going to paint. This is actually the leaf to this flower and not the flower. What you would think that this thing is the leaf and what I'm doing is the flower. It's not. What I'm doing is the leaf, and I mean the leaf, and this is the flower. Okay. Now you're going to make an oval, square circle. Okay. So I don't want you to make a round circle. I want you to make a square oval circle.
Can you turn it this way?
Yep. Just like that.
A potato.
A potato, right. And right in the center, but your center's not going to be in the center. It's going to be off-centered a little bit. You're going to put some little whiskers. Okay? A little star. Don't put it right there. Put it all up, down. It doesn't matter. Then, you don't have to follow that star. I want you to do a curve to a curve. And you're going to do let's see, I got to turn upside down to get it right for me. A curve to a curve. Okay? Now, my little woman up here, they got the same itis up here. She's going to have to realize these curves have got to be different sizes. Don't make them exactly the same because if you make them the same, it's going to look like it's in the center and you want it to be off-center. Okay? Then you're going to do a curve and a curve. And then you're going to do a curve sorry, curve, I'll do a smaller one, and a curve. Okay? And you're going to get sort of like a Maltese cross in there. What? So this is on top, and this area that I'm shadowing in is going to be darker. Okay? Now this is going to, when we get this, when we paint this, it's going to look round like this. Okay? And then you're going to see in there. Now there's another section inside of it. If you're looking at this sideways, you're going to see a stem in here that's curving up like this. And then you'll see these curves here and that roundness if you're looking at that sideways. So there's a little stem that's holding that little puff ball up. Okay? So there, it's good. I'm just going to do the simplest thing. I'm going to do the front side, and some of y'all might find the back side easier. Then there's 4 little petals in there. Now here's your center. So I give the illusion that this is a leaf, and the ends of that leaf would go in towards that center. Then I might have a little point of one here. This is going that way. They don't have to be in here. They can be off center. They can be bigger, smaller. I can do another one, and I can twist it if I want to. We get the illusion this is going back that direction.
That's the leaf.
The little calyx to it. I mean, it's really the leaf to this flower and not the flower, okay? That's what's really confusing to this. It's one of the, probably the one plant that has really not evolved. All of your sexual organs are in the leaf and not the flower. That's strange? Yeah. And then the stem to this.
So that ball part is actually the flower.
And if this was a normal flower, this would be the flower. But this is actually a leaf. Okay? I mean, you don't realize until you get into botanical things, there are a few plants that the leaf has the pistil and stamens to it. Okay? Very few, but there are a few. Okay? I'll tell you one that's really kind of the same that you think is that the berry is a poinsettia.
Yeah.
The red part is not the petals. That little berry, and there's these little bitty hair red lines that come out of that little pod. That red line is the petals. And the center, that big yellow green pod, is the pistil. Okay? And the pollen is down in there too. And some flowers have double pollen, and some have double pistils. Just like some people have more than one ovary, you know, some have only one. Okay? It's the same thing with plants. They're all different things. Some of them show it, and some don't. Okay? Some are shy, and some are flaunty. Now, the stem to this has usually got a pretty good little curve to it. So always make sure that you're coming from this curve matches the center and curves down and then goes down to this trumpet. I'm just going to quickly sketch a little trumpet in there to where we got that. Okay? Where we at? A real quick little thing I'm going to hit and miss that. And that's your foliage to that.
So that stem connects up to the bottom of the...
If you pull this thing up, there should be is it called a rhizome, the one that have tubular?
Right.
It should have that in it, but sometimes it's so small you don't see it. Or it's in the stem of the flower also. Okay?
That's going into the dirt.
It's going into the dirt or the water. Now, this flower can also be in dry soil or water. And if you want to show water, you would put some blues in here and show you some irregular stretch marks in there like that. Fire it, then start washing your other colors on. Don't try to wash 3 and 4 colors to your water, because then you're going to get icky green water, unless you want swamp water. Okay? And if you have a lot of green into this, you don't want green water. Okay? If you got lots of lights and reds and pinks in this, then you could have green water in your look into it. And remember to complement that a little bit. Okay?
What's the name of the flower?
You know, I wish I knew the real name of them. They call them swamp cabbages. We call them field trumpets is what we call them. They probably won't come up because they're only grow in very, very few places. I mean, they might. I don't say, but they're very strange. I mean, how many of y'all have ever seen these flowers?
At a botanical garden.
At a botanical garden, you'll see them. They can, and they don't stay hybrid very long. I mean, they'll go back to their iris. Okay, so just like a rose will go back to a wild rose. Okay. Yes.
You have 4, I guess, leaves on
Yeah.
the outside of the
Right.
flower.
Most of the time, there's 4. You
Four,
can
not
have
five.
sometimes just like some people have 6 fingers.
Okay.
Okay,
but
so
that's,
it's not. Generally, there's 4, and sometimes they're bigger, sometimes they're small. It just depends. Sometimes this flower is really big. I mean, it can be as big as a baseball, and other times it's really small. Okay. Now, I'm now going to get into this flower a little bit. I'll let y'all kind of pass that around. Y'all can kind of sketch it a little bit. If you want to try to put one in, fine. If you feel like it's too much, you want to sketch and play with it a little bit more, do
are
that.
you going to demonstrate?
Okay. Now, again, the color of this does not matter. It can be very green or it can be very red, just depending on the time of the season of it and the nature of it. Okay, you'll have a field of green ones and then there might be a red one with it. So it doesn't really matter how you do it. Just make sure you get some different colors in there. I'm going to keep it, basically I see them very green. And so I've got a lot of red in my flower and I want it to look a little different, so I'll keep it in the green. That's the only reason. Okay? That's just me. Get it up or down, it doesn't matter, and get your little circle. And I want y'all to realize what's happening to this brush as I'm using. Are y'all noticing that I'm parallel to an imaginary circle? My left-hand corner of that brush is following an imaginary line.
And you're painting a square circle, right?
Right. You've got a square head, not a round one. Now, if I tell you that shape is curving up, you see it curving up, don't you?
Yes, because of the light.
Because of the light. If I tell you it's a hole in the porcelain, you see a hole, don't you?
Can.
Okay. Then you've done it correctly. Because I'm doing this as a pod, you're going to see this curving up. Basically, I did the same stroke on this down here, and because of where it was at, you see it going in there, don't you? So this is concave, and this is convex. Basically, it's the same stroke. Okay? Now, I'll get my darker color, my green. I might get my violet brown, and I'm going to do these little curves in here to the center and curve out. Now look at what's happening. Can you see inside that red? And you're seeing where that's getting a more of a curving out now? Let's see if we can see it in here a little bit. You'd have to see it up close. You need to come up close to see it. So when we get finished with it. So I'll do that 4 times.
Different sizes, right?
Right. Sometimes I go all the way to the center, and sometimes I go towards the center with it. Sometimes I may not get into the green.
Will it basically be the size of your opening for the flower that we just painted?
No.
Or would it be
No,
bigger?
it could be
or
bigger or smaller. It really, you know, some flowers have a proportion. This doesn't. When you get into some of your plants that have not gone through evolution, you'll find there's no relationship at all. You know, like a protea. The petals are very much like a feather, and it can be very long and thin, or very short and fat. And sometimes the petals look like pistils. Okay? And then the leaves can be 2 feet long and be very thin. So it just depends on, I mean, they did not go through evolution. There's kind of a, you know, a strange flower that didn't get its stuff together.
So the red doesn't actually touch each red there.
The what?
So the red doesn't touch
It could. I don't. I
could.
mean, I got a couple of them that touch, or I will in a minute. I'm going to teach y'all how to make some whiskers a little bit. I'm just loading my brush up. Sometimes I have to be careful because I only see with one eye, and if I get my color too loose or too wet, it can run. So I really pay attention to that. But if you make your color a little soupy, okay, scoop it up. So you're going to slop, soup, and slide. And then I'll slide back into that color, and I'll get back into that razor edge of that. I'm going to do this bigger than life over here so you can see it, what I'm doing, and then I'm going to miniaturize in there. Remember I said there's these little whiskers in who's ever got the drawing where I did that little star. I'm going to do this big so you can really see it. And I'm going to put this little bit of little whiskers that stick out in there. It doesn't matter how many there are, right at the top, and that will go right there. But it's going to be tiny. I'm just doing it big. And what I'm doing is just setting the right corner, excuse me, I'm right-handed, so I'm setting the left corner of that brush down and rolling it to the tip so I get that nice little point like that. If I was making this whiskers for a pansy, I do it the same way. Sometimes I make these little whiskers just like that. Sometimes I pull them and press and make the veins to my leaves. Okay? Now if you're more comfortable using your scroller, use your scroller. And so right in here, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't matter. Whoops. 4 got away from me. Don't get upset. Just do it again. And you got that little flower in here. Okay? Get your little leaves. This is the harder one. Pull them out there. Red or green, it doesn't really matter. Please don't make this a star. Okay? Remember, don't cut a pie. 2 of these leaves can be together. Some can be bigger and fatter. They don't have to be all the same. Some will just show a little bit of a tip. And some will have a little twist. They do not have to go in a certain place in these either. And you'll get that little look like that. Okay? And then just get your stem. And you're going to start, doesn't matter where you start, just give it that good little curve up. And y'all will see where this finishes up. You can finish up. You can see where this looks like it's coming towards you like that. Okay?
Funny looking thing.
What?
Funny looking thing.
It is a very funny looking
It
thing.
is.
Okay? And sometimes they don't put this out. Sometimes, you know, just like you'll see that little lily, I don't know what it's called, but you'll see the little, sometimes you have this lily and it has this really mint green leaves come up. And then there'll be a little, like a lily that comes out of the ground. It's either yellow, pink, or white, and there's no leaves to it. So sometimes you'll see only this,
Surprise.
and sometimes you'll see these. And sometimes, I mean, if you see this, you may or may not see this. If you see this, you're going to see this. Okay, so if you see the leaf, you're going to see the foliage. I mean the flower. But you're not going to see just this, because this comes later. Okay? Now, they grow in grassy places, so when you're getting in there, y'all, you don't have to, this is not the blade of grass or the leaf that goes to this flower. You can just pull leaves up through here and just do them very spontaneous, which if you want to come in front of this, you get courage and you pull it in front, and you can have some grass coming up there. You can do that day or tomorrow. Okay, it's not a biggie when you put that in there, or you may not want it. You might want to just filter in shadows behind there, or do more of these in here.
So those actually come out of the ground, the one that we just painted, not the one
Right,
you're
both
doing.
of them.
Okay, they have a stem that goes down, or that is actually the leaf
It's part of the
itself?
stem. It's part of it.
So it
And this is has this actual stem, a really hard stem,
Okay.
about the size of this. In reality, this is a normal size of this. And
Now
this
is
about-
that, okay, I'm confused. Is that a pod or is that a flower?
It's the leaf.
It's the leaf.
You know, I mean, I always
I'm
thought
sorry.
it was. I mean, no. I would call it, for my purpose of thinking of it, I would think of it as the pod.
Okay.
Okay, but in botanical thing, it's actually the leaf. Okay.
Okay.
I'm an impressionistic painter. I'm very wild and crazy the way I paint my flowers. Okay, I don't really follow the rules of the flowers because there's so many different varieties of it, but I try to be botanically correct the way I construct it.
Okay.
And that's what makes it look real.
I'm just trying to picture those two together. It's just hard.
You would not, I mean,
No,
even it,
no.
sometimes this stem comes right at the same place where this, and
Oh,
sometimes
that's
it's
so
coming
weird.
down here.
Oh.
You would never, unless you get in with a botanical book, you would never think these two are related to each other in any way. Yes?
Is that a stem coming up over?
Yes, it comes up and down, and the flower either hangs down or it'll hang over or hang out towards you.
Okay.
Okay,
it's
now-
come up from the bottom.
I'm going to draw another one. That's the hard one. Okay, and then when you start getting into the detail of it, and you can wipe out some highlights to it if you want to show a hard edge. Like if I come in here and I feel this is way too hard in here, I might put a highlight in here, or I might put a highlight right in there to help give some dimension to that. Okay, and then I wash some color over it to get rid of that whiteness tomorrow. Okay, yellow, brown, green, whatever color. Going to put pink on it, it's fine. Blue, anything. Now that is the hard one. Okay, I mean, this is when, if you're not familiar with it, I would find it, a good botanical print of it, or I'd go out in the fields and I'd pick one and I would sketch it and look at it and study it and get it so I could really understand it. Okay, but I'll show you the easy one. Okay, you know, yeah, think about a carnation.
Okay.
That seems like a hell of a flower to paint, doesn't it? It's just a bunch of worms, petals just all twisted together when you're looking straight on. But if you look at the back of that flower, the carnation, or halfway, turn it halfway, it doesn't look so difficult to paint, does it? Because the cap of that is telling you it's a carnation. You know, you don't know if that's a poppy bud, a anemone bud, or anything when you're looking straight on that carnation. But when you get the cap that carnation petals come out to, it starts to look like a carnation. So sometimes when a flower doesn't look right, twist it a little different area. Okay? Now, sometimes we've never seen the flower. So you got to imagine what the back of that flower would look like. I'm calling this a flower or pod. I like what she calls a pod. Let's call it a pod. That seems to make sense. So what you do is, in your brain, you turn that flower around. So what are you going to see when you turn that pod around? You're going to see where the stem connects to the pod,
Right.
and you're going to see those three leaves on top of that square round circle, aren't you?
Right.
And you're not going to see the inside of it.
No.
So, I'll paint it on this paper. I'll just do it in one color. I'm not going to do it fancy. I would come in here and I would just paint my little square pod, oval circle, darker on the edges, lighter in the middle, and then I would just establish you a center in there, okay? So if I put a little dot, make that my center, I'd come back here and do these 4 little leaves on top of that pod. Remember I said they're all different sizes, they're not identical to each other. Sometimes they're not even this long. Okay, and there you can see, and then the stem is what's going to be in front of you. I'll get it in different colors so you can see it. And I'll draw this out, and I'll do this brush stroke I'm doing here, and I'll come in here and connect that. I got it bigger than what it really should be, and I've got that stem, and you're seeing the back of that flower. Okay, now that stem connection that you do, I do that quite a bit. Now, if you learn how to paint rose thorns, you can paint stems. So, I'm going to paint a thorn. I'm going to go, and I'm going to do this bigger than life so y'all can see it and see it in there with the motion I do. I'm going up and down with that scroller, and I pull out. Okay? Some thorns have a curve to them. And some thorns come straight out, and some come straight out. So when I'm doing a stem that's connecting to something, like in the back of that pod, I go up and down and pull out and elongate that thorn, and you've got that all shadowed and shaded perfectly. You don't need to go any further with that. The brush did the work. I just moved it the right way. You're trying to use the tip of this scroller, and I use it sideways. Now, we made a thorn. We made a connection point, like you were going to connect a cherry or
So
something
you
like
went
that.
up and down, but when you did it, you pulled it sideways
No, you're going to pull it up and down and out of the middle.
and out of the middle.
Okay? Now, let's look at this stroke. Up and down and pull out. Up and down and pull out. Up and down and pull out. And we got a pumpkin stem or a bell pepper stem or, you know, some kind of stem like that.
Back of the sunflowers.
Right, right. Back of a sunflower will do like that too. Right. See, she's already thinking what that brush, I mean, flowers are all the same. You know, they say we come from apes. Well, you know what? The shape of an ape's nose and our nose is the same. Their eyes are the same. The fingers are the same. You know, we even got a tail. Okay, it's just tucked inside of us. Okay, there's a tail on us. So again, there's many things that are very, very similar. Okay? Now, sometimes y'all have problems when you have a branch. Y'all drill a hole and you have that stem coming out of that branch like that, and it doesn't look natural.
No.
Well, you just borrow that little thorn stroke, and you go up and down on the edge of that, and pull out, and you've got a branch that looks like it's connected to it.
Absolutely.
Okay? And it all comes from that thorn stroke. Now, if you want to finish this, and you can't make those nice little grassy lines with your scroller, with your square shader, make them with your scroller. Make just really thin grasses. Okay? Now, I'm going to get around to everybody, okay? I'll probably look table for table, so we'll kind of get to one spot, and I'll correct that table, and I'll move to the next table. If the table behind you wants to look at it, fine, okay? But I will say this, don't leave the room until everybody's been corrected. Because if you want to do something, play with it, or you want to see, sometimes I get someone creates a real big problem. We got to fix it, and I want you to know how to fix it if you have that problem, okay? Yes, ma'am.
You gotta collect the tickets.
No, he
No.
took our name when we came.
He took your
He's
name.
working on it.
You're all legal now.
Yeah.
You're done. This does not, this does copy. Okay? So here again, so from one thing, we learned how to make a lot of different things. We learned how to make a pod look round, okay, instead of flat, because the dark is on the outside edge and the light is in the middle. We learned how to paint a hole.